crime and terrorism analyst and former G-man and our go-to guy. Good morning, Brad Garrett.
Good morning, McGraw.
All right, so with all this talk about Russia and Putin and the hacking into emails and influencing elections, and then you come these stories every once in a while, you share these Russian spies or people who's tried to stand up to Putin, all of a sudden they're poisoned, they're killed. Now comes another story where a father and a daughter are in critical condition in England, and they're convinced Russia's got something to do with this. What do you know, and what are you thinking as you hear stories like this?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious it's the Russians without any sort of corroboration, obviously, because of the nerve agent they think was used on this former Russian intelligence colonel and his daughter, who became a British spy, as has been reported. So, McGraw, there's a couple things going on here. The Russians want to send a message like they did in 2006 when they killed one of their own in London using a nerve gas, to tell people, if you spy on us, we're going to come after you. And if you do it in a very public or you've passed some really sensitive information, we're going to do it with something that'll give you a horrible death, but also ultimately points the finger back to us. They'll deny it and so forth, and we'll go on. But the point being, they want the world to know, in my view, that they did do this, and it's going to happen to you if you cross us.
Let me play Dime Store Novel here for a second.
Okay.
There's somebody out there saying that's why Paul Manafort's afraid to tell this story. That's why Donald Trump's afraid to tell this story. That's why people are afraid to talk, because they've been compromised, and they're afraid that if they tell the true story, Putin's coming after them.
Well, I wouldn't just write that off as a dime store novel. Now, what does Manafort know? Well, I think Manafort has gotten wealthy based on the Russians. What does he know about internal workings? Has he passed information back and forth? I don't know the answer to that question. But I think if you have done anything that is involved in passing sensitive information or critical information that involves the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, you need to be careful, in my view. So, are those two in jeopardy? I have no idea. But, I'd be concerned if I, in fact, if I were one of those people and I passed information on that was of a very sensitive nature, and or McGraw exposed other people that they already have in place that are giving them information.
What about England? Are they going to retaliate? How leaving America aside for a moment, it seems like Russia's doing this all over the world. How come other countries aren't responding and or trying to retaliate?
There's two reasons. One is that they're doing it. We do it all over the world. Maybe as much as anybody else, because that's the reality of running the world. I mean, McGraw, spying goes back to the 6th century B.C. It was used by General Washington, back in the 1700s. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It's just a critical way to gather information. And so that's one side of it. The other is, and let's use England in particular, their infrastructure and energy supply is partly dependent on Russia. I mean, Russia could shut their lights off. I'm being simplistic here. But it's those kind of things you got to be careful how you go after somebody, because they can have a devastating effect because they have a big hammer, i.e. energy.
When this person was affected with this nerve agent, did somebody have a test tube and drop it in their coffee, or how was this done?
Well, the guy from 2006, they put something in coffee, food, etc. at a restaurant. They have shut down some locations where the daughter and the father were. I think a restaurant, maybe. I mean, they've turned them into contamination sites until they figure out exactly what they have, because this stuff, you're talking about, beyond nasty, this stuff. So my guess is that some version of that, You know, in other words, then they must have had somebody compromised, if it was a restaurant, in there to adulterate the food some way.
Yeah. Are they going to die or are they going to make it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, the problem, McGraw, with nerve agents is it basically shuts down your system where everything just stops working at some point. And so I suppose it depends how much of it they got. That's a real key. And what is it exactly? I mean, think about Kim Jong-un killing Kim Jong-nam at the Kuala Lumpur airport, or North Korean agents, obviously. I mean, he died within minutes. But they got a lot of it, apparently, up his nose or in his mouth. So, the two variables, what was it exactly, and how much did they get?
So this is a real-life Tom Clancy novel.
There's no question about that it is. It won't be pretty people running around in Aston Martins, but yes, it ends up being sort of a dull version of a Clancy novel.
Brad Garrett, you're never dull, that's for sure. Thanks for checking in. Have a good week.